Get your rain boots ready. It is almost time for the 65th annual Dollar Bank Three Rivers Arts Festival. For 10 days, the Cultural District downtown, and this year, the Rachel Carson Bridge, will be flooded with hundreds of artists, plus tons of food and beverages. It is our city's biggest, longest art party of the year and includes free performances. This year's headliners are Ben Folds, Lost Lonely Boys, Doom Flamingo, Martha Redbone, our local symphony, and so many more. It's all going down May 31st through June 9th, noon to 9 p.m. every single day. Find all the details and a map at trustarts.org/TRAF. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, former President Donald Trump is making waves again, and there's another unfortunate Pittsburgh connection. We're talking about the media drama between two very powerful twin brothers, and multiple people are suing the city and engineering firms after the Fern Hollow Bridge collapse. Plus, if you like ginger beer and free drinks, we have an event for you. It's May 24th, the Friday News Roundup. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. I'm with CityCast Sophia Lowe. Hello.
Hey there.
And Owen Gabby, our illustrious sales representative. I think you've got a pitch for us right now, actually.
I do. A new voice saying some similar things. CityCast is doing our annual listener survey. It would really help us out if you took it. Even if you took it last year, we would be very grateful if you took it again, since we can't use last year's data anymore.
Absolutely. If you are willing, please go to citycast.fm/survey. It is only 7 minutes long. Once again, citycast.fm/survey, and you'll be eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card. I would be taking this thing if I were eligible for that gift card.
I took this last year when I wasn't a member of the team, so I tried.
Oh, and you did not win.
I did not win.
But you helped us out.
Yeah, but you can win the gift card and some CityCast Pittsburgh swag. And once again, that link is citycast.fm/survey.
So to the news, one of our local TV news stations, KDKA, is probably getting a few more views than usual this week. Former president and current presumptive Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump did an interview, a one-on-one with John Delano this week, saying he's looking at potential restrictions on contraceptives, on birth control. And now the former president is trying to walk that back.
Yeah, that was the first headline I saw when I woke up a couple days ago, and it was just like a deep sigh, and oh boy.
Yeah, rather than try to summarize this exact exchange, we're just going to play it in full. It is less than a minute long.
So related to this is the whole issue of contraceptives. Do you support any restrictions on a person's right to contraception?
Well, we're looking at that, and I'm going to have a policy on that very shortly. And I think it's something that you'll find interesting. And it's another issue that's very interesting. But you will find it, I think, very smart. I think it's a smart decision. But we'll be releasing it very soon.
Well, that suggests that you may want to support some restrictions, like the morning after pill or something.
We are also, things really do have a lot to do with the states. And some states are going to have different policies than others. But I'm coming out within a week or so with a very comprehensive policy, which I'll get to you immediately.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Sophia, my reaction after hearing it is roughly the same as yours.
But like you said, Megan, Trump is backtracking. He posted a message on his social media platform, Truth Social.
Because reminder, he was permanently suspended from X, which was Twitter. I can't keep up.
I'm still calling it Twitter. But anyway, Trump posted that he has never and will never advocate imposing restrictions on birth control or other contraceptives, and that this is a Democratic fabricated lie.
It's not a Democratic fabricated lie. It was on KDKA.
We have the clip.
CityCast Pittsburgh executive producer Mallory Falk reminded me of this because, she didn't live here at the time, but she was talking about how she remembers headlines for it. It scared the mess out of a lot of Pennsylvania women when he got elected last time. I reported a story for WESA back then just about how many people rushed to get IUDs that would outlast his presidency because, they have like different lifespans. But like just in case, the number of appointments at the time just skyrocketed. Though I remember checking back a few months later and the number of insertions, like where they actually went through with it and got the IUD, were fewer. Like they were still above average. But like, I guess the takeaway is that people were going to their doctor and being like, should I be afraid? Do I need to get something that will last years, not weeks? And it was such a scary moment for a lot of birthing people, wondering if suddenly they'd have like even less bodily autonomy. And that was before Roe v. Wade fell.
Yeah, and I can imagine that if Trump gets reelected, something similar might happen. And not to continue the bad news, but there's also more about legal actions that are coming out since the Fern Hollow Bridge collapse.
Yes. So the Fern Hollow Bridge collapsed 2 years ago, which feels crazy to say out loud. The latest news is that the PRT driver in that big red bus that was in the ravine, his name was Daryl Luciani. He filed a lawsuit against the city and 3 engineering firms.
Yeah, so he was driving over the bridge when it collapsed, and he was injured that day. Still to this day, it sounds like he has a rotator cuff tear in one of his shoulders, PTSD.
Can you imagine, like, falling, like, you're in a car? Everything about that gives me the willies when I think about it.
Yeah, he talks about how he did not think he was going to survive, and I cannot imagine, like, what runs through your head when something like that happens to you. He's not the only one who got injured. Someone else broke his neck. So, all of these things are like medical issues that stick with you. Luciani is filing a lawsuit against the city and the 3 engineering firms. And he's basically saying that the city and engineering firms ignored issues that had been raised with the bridge because it's not like it randomly collapsed. There had been infrastructure issues that had been raised way before it fell.
Well, Sophia, you attended the National Transportation Safety Board's virtual meeting when they talked about all the reasons why the bridge fell. I feel like it makes you our unofficial correspondent now for this incident since you sat through that 3-hour call. We are still so sorry.
3 hours?
It was so long. We kept pinging Sophia and being like, is it still going?
I was like, give me a minute.
Braver than I am.
I mean, clearly it's been useful because we keep talking about it.
Apparently it was a good use of time. Remind us what was happening with the bridge and I guess what flags had been raised in advance.
Yeah, I'll give you the SparkNotes version. So one thing was that there were like fully holes in the bridge. There were pictures of that during the meeting. Very yikes. The drainage wasn't working properly, so that meant water was collecting on the bridge and leading to corrosion. And then also the load limit on the bridge wasn't calculated correctly. At the time of the collapse, the bridge really should have been closed for traffic.
I'm glad you were on that 3-hour meeting and not me, because every detail of that is something I borderline don't want to hear, because I'm partially convinced it's the case on just about every bridge in Pittsburgh as I'm about to drive over one. So we're just going to pretend it was a one-off thing.
Yeah, every single time. I shudder a little bit every time you talk about this, Sophia. So this bus driver isn't the only person to sue. A dentist who was also there when the bridge fell is suing along with some other drivers and bus passengers who were also there. It's a lot of legal action flying around.
Yeah, so to give you more context, part of the lawsuit that Luciani, the bus driver, is filing, so I read that his lawyer was quoted in the Trib saying this collapse was preventable, and the lawsuit is saying that the city was negligent in its upkeep of the bridge, so doing things that could have prevented or mitigated the corrosion and things like that.
But Sophia, I mean, the city's in charge of the specific bridge. So why are these engineering firms also getting called out in the lawsuit?
Yeah, the Trib did a really great job of breaking down all the details for why the city and these engineering firms are getting sued. We'll link that in the show notes. But basically the gist of it is that the engineering firms didn't really recommend proper maintenance for all the issues that were raised. And, they were the ones that really messed up the math for how much weight the bridge could hold. Plus, the Trib explains that the Fern Hollow Bridge was one of 6 K-frame bridges in the state. And apparently those are just not the best bridges structurally.
Oh, I guess I didn't know that. You're going to have to do a really quick and good explain to me like I'm 5 segment here. What is a K-frame bridge?
Yeah, I also needed this because I am not an engineer, so heavily relying on the Trib again for this explanation. Thank you. They reported that a K-frame bridge is a type of bridge called a non-redundant bridge, and apparently...
Non-redundant is not a word I want to hear when referring to city infrastructure. I want many redundancies.
Take it up with the engineers who named the bridge. But the codes have shifted over time, so they're not built anymore because these bridges are known to be less safe. And, quote, the design has limited ways to disperse the stress on the bridge, end quote. So basically what this means is if one part of the bridge is mess up, that's more likely to lead to an issue with the bridge as a whole.
Huh. Okay. That kind of makes sense. So I guess essentially stress on one part means stress on every part of it, which I guess is relatable. It's me trying to figure out engineering in simple terms.
I mean, that just sounds like, us. Like,
yeah,
if I have stress in one part of my life, I have stress in many parts of my life. Sophia, you said 6 K-frame bridges in the state. Do we have any more in the city of Pittsburgh we need to be worried about?
1. Yes, there is 1 K-frame in our area, but I don't think we need to be worried about it. Fingers crossed. So KDKA TV reported that in 2022, so after the Fern Hollow collapse, that the K-frame bridges in the state were getting inspected. So that included the bridge over Beechwood Boulevard. It's at Murray Avenue. And I haven't seen anything since then about problems with the bridge. And that KDK article did say that this bridge at Murray wasn't as badly rated as the Fern Hollow one. So I think you're still good to drive over that. But I don't know if this helps.
Good luck,
Both of you sound nervous. And one final element to this whole thing is that the city should have also done a better job of vetting the engineering firms in the first place. So just making sure that the people who were inspecting the bridge were good at their job. One of the firms that had looked at the Fern Hollow Bridge had been investigated for maintenance failures in the past.
I gotta be honest, this is all just leading me to making a list of bridges that I don't want to keep going over right now.
It really does make you assess your route, like you type it into Google or Waze or something, and then you're like, but is that really the way I want to go?
We are really not crossing rivers anymore.
I forget now, what are the folks asking for who are going through this that have filed the lawsuits?
Mm-hmm. One attorney told WPXI that there's, quote, no such thing as jackpot justice. And the Trib has said that the city has a $500,000 limit to paying out damages to all the plaintiffs. But there isn't any limit like that for all of the engineering firms. But I guess it'll be a while before we find out, who would win this lawsuit. And if the plaintiffs win, what their payout would be. And if they win, hopefully that payout will cover things like medical bills. This trial, if it makes it that far, won't start until the fall of next year.
The show today is brought to you by an incredible local resource, AIDS Free Pittsburgh, and their pledge to end the HIV/AIDS epidemic in Allegheny County by 2030. If that is a cause that is close to your heart, make sure you're around for their biggest event of the summer, the 6th annual Too Hot for July. It is a party, but it is also a chance to get confidential HIV and STI testing for free, plus info on the incredible preventative medicines we have now to keep yins happy, healthy, and feeling your most confident out on the town. So come on out to Allegheny Commons East Park on Thursday, May 30th. Yes, July is in the name, but the event is in May. Don't get confused. May 30th from 4 to 10 p.m. There will be DJ sets, a health fair and marketplace, a ballroom-inspired dance battle, cash bar, food trucks, and more. Plus, a performance by Tony Award winner Alex Newell, a.k.a. Unique from Glee. This is all thanks to True Tea Pittsburgh and so many folks doing the good work out here in the community. So do not miss out. Learn more at toohotforjuly.com. Before we get into our next bit of news, we have a fun announcement.
Yes, CityCast Pittsburgh members have already heard about this. If you also want early announcements, you should join our membership program. You can join and find out more at membership.citycast.fm/Pittsburgh.
Yes.
But on to the announcement itself.
Yes, we are having another little happy hour next week.
Oh, and I think this will be the first one you've gotten to be a big part of.
Yes, I think this is the first one now that I'm a part of the team.
Yeah,
They're
we're really
super
stoked to
fun.
have you. Please come say hi to us. It's going to be next week, so Thursday, May 30th, from 5 to 6:30 p.m. at Jackworth Ginger Beer in Larimer. If you listen to our show a lot, you know that we got to check them out before they opened. They have such delicious cocktails, and I guess neither of y'all got to go. That was Mallory, Francesca, and I. But Sophia, we did bring you back a little treat. We always bring you a treat.
Yes, thank you so much for the little treat. If you also want a little treat on us, come early. The first 20 people who show up will have their drink on our tab.
Their first drink on our tab. We don't pay for everything. If you guys drink a lot, that's on you.
Not
but yes,
unlimited ginger beers.
no, not unlimited ginger beers. But you should drink and you should come hang out with us. We'll also have friend of the pod, Eric White of Pittsburgh Dumplings, serving food on site. So it's going to be fun.
Delicious.
Okay, back to the news. We got word this week that the publisher of the Post-Gazette has been ousted by his twin brother.
Yeah, Succession is over, so I think this whole saga should be the new Pittsburgh version of the show.
So the guy's name is Alan Block. He was also the CEO and chairman of Block Communications, Inc., which owns the Post-Gazette and the Toledo Blade. Those are the two major metros in their respective cities. And also, as of last year, Pittsburgh City Paper.
Yes, which I, disclaimer, worked at for about 6-ish months during the transition between the two.
Yeah, because the Butler.
Yeah, the Butler Eagle sold to Block in, I believe it was January of 2023.
2023, yeah.
Which made for a little bit of an interesting experience because it was right during City Paper covering a lot of the Post-Gazette strike. And then word came down, that then Block Communications had actually bought City Paper, which made for an interesting few days.
I can imagine. Now I want to go back and look at the articles.
Yeah, I was on leave at the time, so that completely missed my brain until the last few weeks. I was catching up on, some of the stuff that occurred back then. So I guess in this whole thing, there are two people to know, Alan Block and his twin brother, J.R. Block. Alan filed a lawsuit against J.R. earlier this month to stop what Alan described as a, quote, ill-conceived, resentment-fueled, end quote, move by J.R. to allegedly sell the newspapers and their publishing company, which I feel like that's sort of the bigger news, this implication that stuff could get sold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just the concept of suing your twin brother over part of your empire, it feels so archaic, I guess.
Yeah, so JR is technically the editor-in-chief of the Post-Gazette, but from what I've heard, he's a lot of newspaper owners and just isn't around that much. There are other people here in Pittsburgh that are actually leading the day-to-day coverage of everything. But Pittsburgh is, of course, aware of JR because he's been sort of infamous over the years.
Isn't he the one who lost his mind in the newsroom? I think it was in front of his daughter and a bunch of reporters.
Yep, that would be JR.
Okay. Also the one who took pictures with Trump on his private plane, I think. That was before an election.
Yeah, it was before the 2016 election. Also JR.
Sweet. Okay. And he also the one who slapped a protester?
No, that one was Alan.
Ah, fun. Okay. I believe I remember it was with a burger bag or something.
What?
I remember the video and it was obviously awful, but also so ridiculous at the same time.
Correct. From the photos published at the time, it looks like it might have been Wendy's. But despite all of those things, from everything I've heard, it sounds like perhaps JR is slightly more chill since he got married. And he said recently to his own newspaper, we're quoting here, that he has no intention to sell like his brother Alan alleges he is. I'll read you the quote. "It's my goal to remain in journalism for as long as I'm alive. I'm not retiring. I'm lucky and healthy enough to support something that's in short supply. We need more, not less." So I guess we will have to see if that's true.
Well, what does this all mean for the Post-Gazette and City Paper?
Yeah, who actually is, I guess, buying media organizations in 2024?
Yeah, it seems like such a mixed bag, right? Just poking around on the internet and also just living as a journalist in this era. One option is, of course, private equity. There's other media groups like Alden Global or Gannett, which both have reputations for kind of gutting the organizations that they buy. There's billionaires or very rich people like the Block family. In their case, BCI was founded by a patriarch in 1901. So they have been in this specific game here in Pittsburgh for a very long time. But it can shake out differently. Like the Scaife family very famously swooped in and tried to acquire a paper in Pittsburgh many years ago. And when they weren't successful, Dick Scaife created the Pittsburgh Trib out of the ashes of the Pittsburgh Press when it closed after a strike in the 90s. Like we have a long history of like things shifting and changing here in the Pittsburgh landscape.
Yeah, I didn't realize that's how we got the Trib. But speaking of strikes, the PG is still on strike too.
Yeah, some of them. So there are 4 unions who have been on strike for ages. I was reminded today that I think the strike is the same age as my child, so about 19 months.
So long.
I'm not sure if that's the timeline you want to track on. But.
I know. Who knew? The National Labor Relations Board gave them some sign of hope a few weeks ago, but nothing since, nothing definitive. A 5th union settled with the paper too, but they agreed to dissolve as a result of the deal.
Okay. And is there any idea like when we'll know more? Obviously, this is all kind of some infighting. Do we know when the next step is, like when they're actually going to sell the PG or possibly city paper?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know if they're going to sell them at all. Like maybe that's just allegations flying between family members. It's really hard to say. That lawsuit to stop any potential sale is still out there. I think it's worth noting too, Alan Block, even though he's lost his titles with the company, he still owns a 25% stake in it in BCI. JR owns another 25%, and then other stakeholders and family members own the remaining 50%. So Alan is still around. He's just not in charge in the same way. So, Sophia, all of that to say, I think your succession theory is pretty apt.
Thank you. I spend a lot of time thinking about my TV analogies. And before we move on, one last thing about Alan Block. I found this Observer story from 1999 about how he used to travel from Toledo to New York City. He did this all the time to try and find a wife. It's hilarious to me, but also upsetting because of just how he views women. And he says that he, quote, doesn't believe in openly homosexual people. Hopefully, with 25 years, some of this has changed, but I'm going to read you the quotes I found the most ridiculous. So first up, I would have rather been single in 1950, 1955. I would rather have been dealing with the woman who wanted to get married or had to get married. I think it would have been a lot easier. I can't run a house. I can't even have a nice apartment. I can sign the check.
Oh, okay. I would hope with some time and perspective, maybe things have changed, but who knows?
We're trying to give the 25-year excuse right now.
Well, he can still sign the check. We know that.
Oh, my God. Not anymore.
Hey, 50% of it or whatever it is, 25.
Okay, and here's how the article ends. We'll have the link if you want to read the full thing in the show notes. But he says, the craziest view that you'll hear from me, it would be considered crazy. It would be considered crazy. Be considered crazy. But I think it's going to happen in our lifetime. I believe we're going to see the northern country that borders us break up. It's just a matter of when. We're going to have one English-speaking country in North America.
Oh, my God.
I would like to interview him and see what he thinks about Canada now.
That's just that is a fascinating brain in that article.
Yeah, I like that they didn't trim anything. Like they be considered crazy was in there 3 separate times.
Just leaving you with that.
Yeah. Well, before we go, we like to end our Friday show on something we'll be thinking about over the weekend. Owen, what do you have?
Yeah, I can do my little sports corner here, but this came in on Wednesday. But we're getting the NFL draft, baby.
Yes.
It was announced that Pittsburgh will be the host of the 2026 draft. They had put in a plan for it, I believe, a few months ago, and it got approved on Wednesday. So this year in 2024, it drew 775,000 people in Detroit. So it is going to be quite the production.
That's just massive. I feel like I've said this multiple times this week, but the city of Pittsburgh's whole population is 300K. Like, can you imagine if we get that kind of influx?
Correct. I can't really wrap my head around the amount of people just that would go to a draft. It kind of boggles the mind, and I say that as a huge football fan. But all that being said, it is going to be quite the production. The intent is to host it at Point State Park and Acrisure Stadium. Although if it's supposed to be at Point State Park, that makes me wonder if it will even happen in that context.
Ooh. So this update is about the Irish Center, and there was a super controversial development that had to deal with turning it into housing. People were upset about, changing the character of Frick Park and bringing more traffic to the area because it wasn't really equipped to handle that. But that's not happening now. There is a new taker who stepped up, and it's official. The Phipps Conservatory is buying the Irish Center. So they have a press release that explains that the building's eventually going to be the base for their homegrown edible garden program. So that does really cool stuff like classes and bringing raised beds for growing produce in underserved neighborhoods. But right now, in the meantime, it's going to house operations for the Phipps adult education programs.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Our music is by Benji. Mallory Falk is our executive producer, and Sophia Lowe produced the show. Adrienne Gonzalez wrote our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter with help from a new addition to the CityCast Pittsburgh team. I am so happy to welcome Kevin Gavin to the squad. He's going to be pitching in with us for a little bit while Francesca's away, and we're just so happy to have him. You will definitely be hearing him on the podcast too. I am your host, Megan Harris. We will be back on Tuesday with more news from around the city. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, everyone.
Yeah, the holes in the bridge feels like a bridge too far, no pun intended.